oftentimes they can keep the same CUSIP, but even then, they're generally given a new CUSIP. So what's the CUSIP that you're looking at?
The CUSIP, so the CUSIP number, is that what you're asking me?
Yeah. What's the CUSIP? Mm-hmm.
I will provide that for you right now. I did not expect this, so I was not prepared.
No, I understand. And how
I'm
does
ready.
so the CUSIP was originally for MMTLP?
Okay, so MMTLP was originally had no ticker symbol attached to it. It was issued as a Series A preferred share dividend of Torchlight before Torchlight finalized this merger with Metamaterials, because Metamaterials had no urge to be in the oil and gas exploration business. So Torchlight spun all of their assets out into the Series A preferred share and then merged with Metamaterials. Now, after this all happened, it was believed at the time that Torchlight was grossly naked shorted. And sure enough, a few months later, the MMTLP ticker symbol was assigned to the Series A preferred share, and lo and behold, it began trading on OTC markets against the wishes of the issuer. Now, what we've discovered, I don't know, I couldn't even tell you how long they've been using it, but the CUSIP number is 89102U103.
Okay, so that's the CUSIP. So you're saying that CUSIP was originally assigned to MMTLP?
That CUSIP was originally assigned to TRCH.
To TRCH, okay.
Yes,
ma'am.
What
happened to it?
And now, suddenly, it's appeared as the CUSIP of this BitTech Technologies Corporation, and there have been a significant amount of questions behind this BitTech thing. I'm trying to get a hold of Curtis, and I believe he might be able to shed some deeper light on it.
So the CUSIP, I mean, I can look up the CUSIP and see, the history of it. The only way that a CUSIP can go from one company name to another company name, I believe if the company changes name, and I have to check this, but if a company changes name, I believe they can keep their CUSIP, though I'm not entirely sure. Usually it changes because it's somehow, there's a formula. The last digit is a check digit, and that's calculated through a mathematical formula of the preceding 8 digits. I think it's a 9-digit, right? 1, 2, 3, or 6, 8, yeah, 9. So they do some math on the first 8 digits, and that's how they get the 9th digit. And usually like a 1-0 is going to be an equity, more likely a common than a preferred. It's not often that you see a 1-0 on a preferred, which makes me question if that was correctly assigned to, MMTLP, you're saying, was spun off as a separate company, right?
Well, MMTLP was spun off into a separate security, which then the asset behind that Series A preferred share was spun off into NextBridge. And what was originally supposed to happen here was on December 6th, 2022, FINRA released a corporate action that notified the investing public that we had until December 12th to close our positions. On December 7th, Jeff Mendel, then vice president of OTC Markets, goes on a broadcast and in a 3-minute segment says at least 9 times that we have until December 12th. FINRA released another corporate action, this time without consulting the company, changing the language, removing the pay date, and seemingly telling us that we had until December 12th to close our positions. In that interim time period, every single major U.S. broker-dealer that we inquired with told us that we had, including my own, told us in writing that we had until December 12th, that the 9th and the 12th would be position close only through the end of the trading day. Only for us to wake up on December 9th and discover that the MMTLP security had been halted. And on the 14th, what they are alleging is that we've all now been exchanged 1-for-1 for shares of NextBridge Hydrocarbons, which is a non-tradable company. The problem is that the problem is that we've gotten multiple reports from, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I had to reconnect, my internet dropped off, but I guess what I'm getting at is that the thing that you posted was about the broker saying that they couldn't get you shares.
Yes, and similarly, other brokerages, they started out by trying to charge exorbitant fees to sway their clients from being able to transfer to the transfer agent. That's what caught my eye about your posts, that you've been holding your shares at a transfer agent since 1988. And the brokerages were not allowing us to do so. My understanding is that some nudging came from FINRA, which had them remove the fees for a period of time. But lo and behold, as more and more clients began to transfer, more and more of these brokerages.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not hearing you now, Drew.
You can't hear
Can
me?
you check your, I switched over to, yeah, connecting. Okay, go ahead, Drew. Drew, you still have the speaker. Okay, he's connecting again. I just switched over to my phone data because my internet connection wasn't solid. So I guess we lost Drew. I mean, the long story of which company became which company, that I know. I'm interested in what Drew has that is so supposed to blow my mind about the fact that you can't get shares from a broker. Let me look in the chat and see if there's something there. Let's see, what do we have here? I'm connected, right? Yeah, okay. What's in the chat? Mahalo, Susanne, for this space. I just messaged some people. Got to get a hold of Drew. He's here. Blah, blah, blah. While this is happening. Drew, I'm here. Are you there now? Drew? Drew requests to speak. Let's see if we have Drew in there. Did Drew come back in? I don't see him anywhere. Anybody see him? I'm sorry, Winston, I do see your request, but I am waiting for Drew. He's supposed to have some kind of earth-shaking information for me. Yeah, I'm sorry, Trust, who is this? Trust me, bro, but I'm just not, it's not there. So, I mean, the fact that you have asked the broker for certificates and they're not giving it to you, or they're not transferring your shares, I mean, that's, you know, we've just been seeing this for such a long time. It says, I need a mic again. Okay, Drew, let's try this. She requested. Okay, I'll try adding you as a speaker because I just don't see a request here, a microphone request. So let me just try this, add speaker. DrewDiligence. Oops, come on. Deanery, WD, DREWDILI. Oh, there you are. Okay, so I sent you an invite to speak. I don't know why you're not getting it, but I sent you an invitation to speak. I think if you can get back in here, Drew, I think the best thing is like let's just get right to the point. Yeah, I don't know what the problem is on that end. Apparently there's something. I'm not seeing a request to speak or your name here anywhere. Speakers. I tried adding Drew as a speaker, but I don't even see Drew in attendance. I wonder if his connection, he's just lost connection. That's the only thing I can think of. Let's try this again. Here, Maggie Moon. I've seen you several times. Here, why don't I open that up for you to speak? Maybe you can add something to this. Do you see the request, Maggie Moon? Oh, anyway, I sent the invite. I'm not sure what's going on there because there you are.
I just want to see if it's working for you, see if anybody can get up here. It's working?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you just
Okay,
fine.
okay.
And you had requested, and I've seen you post several times about this. I don't know what happened to Drew. He's just not, I didn't even see him listed as a listener. And I've sent an invite to speak. So if you have something, if you know what he was going to talk about, maybe you can jump in there.
I don't know what he's going to talk about. I'm actually a little bit behind on this subject. I'm shocked that all this is happening. It's like CSIP number, but I can try to send him. I do know of him. I can try to send him a message and see what's going on.
Yeah, try that. Just let him know that I've already sent him an invitation to speak. But so Maggie, the question about the QSIP and the name changes, that's sort of getting off the topic. In a post earlier today, DrewDiligence posted some message from a broker saying that someone had requested shares, and the broker wrote back, "We didn't get a certificate, so we can't give you a share." And my response is, same shit, different day. This has been happening. I've documented this over the last 20 years. Many, many times that this happens because it ultimately means that the broker basically didn't receive shares at settlement, which means that or they lent them out, which is also mentioned in the note from the broker. And then also the shares are on loan, or they failed to receive them, which means that someone failed to deliver them, which all the way around means that someone's selling more shares than exist. And the system is allowing this to happen through the support of failures to deliver, I don't know what else to call it. It's we support it, we look the other way for it, we slap on the wrist of a 25-cent fine or a $2.50 fine per fail to deliver in the US, which is insane.
They just factor it into the cost of doing business.
Exactly, cost of doing business, because the money that they can make on that money, especially in a high interest rate environment, is significant. I mean, they broker through this contractual settlement date accounting. The broker can actually debit the cash account of the investor, whether or not they receive shares. So they have access to that money. They repo it, they overnight lend it, they do lots of things. And in a high interest rate environment, it's certainly worth, $250 to pay $250 to MSCC. And someone might say, well, they also have to make a contribution to the participant fund, what everyone's referring to now as a margin call. But that money is still theirs. It's not like they actually have to pay that in. When their liability for deliveries falls, then they get that money back. So it's not really like they're paying that in to some fund where it's going to be, let me see, who else is here? I still don't see him there. I'm just checking the request and that sort of thing. So what else, see if there's anything else in here. Oh, I'm going to put most recent.
He's answering me now, Dr. Trimbath. And by the way, thank you for everything you do and for helping us be informed. He said that the connectivity got reset. It takes me, hopefully. Yeah, he doesn't know why. He said he can't get back in.
Well, tell him to go to my page, right? My profile page, and it's in there. There should be a button there that says reconnect, because this space is still visible. Yeah, just tell him to go there. And I sent him a direct invitation, so it's probably in his timeline as well, on his profile page.
Okay, do you know what this means? He says that you have to switch your connectivity over and restart the space. Is that true?
No, because I got kicked out and I came right back in while he was still talking.
Oh, he said by running spaces. Okay, I see. Sorry, Joe. By running spaces for 2 years, it's like a glitch that happens, I think he's saying.
It does, but he should see a button somewhere that says reconnect and come right back in where we left off.
He's messaging right now. He can hear us. Can you see that?
No, I guess I'm going through some of these messages here. So Social Watch says, can you make GGKOUL a co-host so he can manage mics? Managing mics is not the problem. The problem is that Drew's lost connection. So can explain how I don't need a co-host. When we switched to data, it glitched the space boot, your Twitter app. So I'm still there's quite a few people here. Somehow.
Yeah, it's crazy to have to reset the whole thing, but I've never had that happen.
No, I don't think we need to do that. There are, does it show? Doesn't show how many people are here.
261.
261, and then, so we're all still here. I wouldn't, all he has to do is go to the, I don't know, what are you thumbs downing, Mr. Bagelman?
Is it invite the same as being?
I sent an invite, and I sent an invite to speak, and I don't know what to tell you. I got kicked out and came back in. So, and I don't think it's a question of who is. Let's see if there's anyone else here. I'm looking through the requests for speakers for people that names I recognize. JunkSavvy. I'm just going to put you in there as a speaker. Maybe you can help clarify this. Do you know what it was that DrewDiligence was trying to, talk about? This was supposed to be something that's going to blow my mind that I've never heard of before.
Hi, Dr. Trimbath at JunkSavvy. How are you?
Just fine, just fine.
Good.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for the mic, and I'm sorry that you're having difficulties with Drew. I know as a space host as well, it happens. Sometimes it happens. I'm actually looking at Drew's post now, and it looks like what he's referencing is a trade station. Is that what you responded to this morning?
Yes, exactly. Well, for me, it's afternoon, but yeah, it was there was a white type on black background. It was I don't know what it was from. It's a bit of knowledge, but it seems to be from Trade Station. Yeah,
it is. So this is a correspondence that was sent to shareholders from Trade Station that were requesting to transfer their formerly MMTLP shares which are now Nexpert Hydrocarbon shares, to the transfer agent. And unfortunately, Trade Station, who has a 122,600 plus certificate allotment, indicated in this post that they could not fulfill the request because unfortunately they have loaned out too many shares that they have not been able to retrieve, and that they no longer have certificates to back the request.
Right, and I read that.
Yeah. Yep. And so I will say the community went to great lengths and great effort to conduct our own share count. So with verified shares, we collected brokerage statements and such. We actually demonstrate in this community that not only were their shares registered at AST, at the time they had registered all but 400 shares at AST that were allowed by certificates, but we actually collected shareholder data indicating outside of AST, we had over 112% over that. So not only did they loan out shares, they loaned out more than 100% of their shares.
So then did you, when you did that count, did you take into consideration the fact that, of course, DTC is holding, CD & Co is holding shares for brokers that might belong to individuals who have broker statements? And also that quite often brokers will have shares registered in their own nominee name. So Merrill Lynch & Co. or Goldman & Co., something like that. But you can only get access to that more detailed list if you're the issuer. So if you're not in touch with the issuer, sometimes it's harder to do that. But did you take that into consideration in your account? I'm not in any way denying the possibility that 112% of the shares were loaned. This happens. I know this happens. I've been documenting it for 20 years.
Sure.
So it's not, my challenge to Drew was that tell me something I don't already know or something that I haven't heard before. So, but yes, but were you part of this share count or was someone else?
I was, yeah. So there were several of the community members that participated in that share and organized the share count. So when it comes to the DTC allotment list, that was established on, I believe it was December 13th. We were given what TradeStation's allotment was via a post by the former CEO of Torch, John Berta, he actually presented it in a Twitter post. And that's how we knew that they had 122,000, I think it's 122,600 share allotment. The entire list has not been released. I think we have 12 of the 105 brokers. We have 12 brokers and clearing firms allotment. And so we do have access to some of that.
I'm sorry, just so I keep up with you. Sure. You're saying that there's 105 DTCC members have shares held at DTC, right?
Yes, they're certificate allotments. Yeah, they're bulk certs. Well, there's 105.
On a certificate allotment, it's a number of shares on deposit, but I understand what you're saying because DTC doesn't certificate anything if they don't have to. But so there's 112 DTC members who have shares on deposit there, and you have details on 12 of them.
105, and yeah, I believe the number is 12. I think there's 12 numbers that were released. So for example, Fidelity has approximately 21 million. Schwab has 12,877. Don't ask me how I have that number memorized. Yeah, so we do. We have several
12. It's easy to remember, right? 12.
Well, I will say, Dr. Trimbath, with TradeStation, there is actually current litigation going on in the Southern District of Florida. There is a lawsuit on behalf of a shareholder named Intercoastal Waterways that is in the process of doing pretrial motions now. They named FINRA as not a DOE defendant, a nominal defendant, as well as 10 other DOE defendants. And of course, the main defendant is TradeStation. So that is actually a civil RICO case. And so currently the judge's decision is sitting with the motion to dismiss on behalf of FINRA, and then the motion to compel arbitration from TradeStation. And so we are waiting for the results on that as well. So there is a lawsuit involved in this case, but I think the breaking news that, and this has been out for a while, this TradeStation email has came out, I think about 7-8 months ago, maybe even a little bit longer. But I think what is the breaking news for our community is recently, I think he's back. Hang on just a second. Let me see if Drew's back and I'll let him, since he started this engagement. I don't see him. So Dr. Trimbath, I don't know if you see Drew or not.
I don't see him here. And I've got the replies set to, let me put it on most recent.
Well, he has two accounts. He has his DrewDiligence account, and he also has a Karma Collects account. So it may be either of those.
I have free, there's a free, but I don't see the name. I mean, I see DrewDiligence there.
I want to hear I wonder if, do you know about mutual funds?
So I sent the speaker invitation to DrewDiligence, which was Karma Collects.
MMTLP MMTLP.
Hey, Maggie, you actually have an open mic. I didn't know if you knew you had an open mic.
Oh,
no,
sorry,
you're
thanks.
fine. No worries. So, Dr. Trimbath, but I think what we have discovered in the last few days, and honestly, other people have found it months ago, but it's gotten some traction in the last few days, is we have found that there is a company called Bytech, and Bytech, through some of their SEC filings, have printed the former Torch company, which is the Genesis company for MMTLP, now NextBridge, their QSIP. What we are digging into now is to whether or not that QSIP has actually been used to execute trades. I know I called my broker this morning, and that QSIP is not being used by my broker. Bytech has their own QSIP, but that is just one broker. I'm with Schwab. So I think there is concern. I'm sure you're aware that we have been working with Congress for almost 2 years. We've been working with media. We've been working with various attorneys through legal actions by shareholders to trying to get data. And of course, they don't want to deliver what is the share count. So I think the concern from our community is this potentially a method to hide the data and hide the potential imbalance of shares? He's telling me he's in the space, Dr. Trimbath. Drew, I know you can hear us, but nobody can see you. So Dr. Trimbath, I'd like to propose, if you can make me a co-host, that may reset the space and maybe you can see him then and I can help him get to the mic. Is that possible?
I'm going to try to send another invitation under the this new thing that he signed in under. Where is it? Invite speakers. Add a speaker. I'm going to try to add him as a speaker under this new. What is it? Free commercials.
Yes, that's his account. He's got one that's free commercials and one that's Karma Collect. So yeah, either of those, if you can see either of those. And then actually I just realized I can't actually co-host.
I don't need a co-host.
Okay.
I know, like I've got, there are like 64 posts in the chat and they're all about let me co-host. So let me just make this clear.
No worries.
I don't need a co-host.
Okay.
And I don't need to reset the space.
Dr. Trimbath, he's here.
Thank
God. I'm going to go ahead and step down and let Andrew take over since he started this engagement.
Okay, just
Junk,
yeah,
why don't you stay up here because you're obviously very capable of participating in this conversation also, and you know a lot as well.
But Junk can mute the mic while you tell me exactly, take it from where Junk left off in terms of if she was asking me if this was a valid way to, I don't know, prove something.
So I was running around like a chicken without a head on trying to figure out what was what there. So I didn't get a chance to hear the entire exchange. But
so Drew, let me tell you where I got her up to so we don't have to tread over the same ground. I shared with her TradeStation, the community share count, the lawsuit, Intercoastal Waterways, and then I was sharing with her a little bit about Bytech and how on the SEC filings they printed the QSIP, but we are still trying to verify if that QSIP, which formerly belonged to Torch, was actually transacting under. I know my broker does not use that QSIP. I am with Schwab. They use Bytech's QSIP. But the last question I asked Dr. Trimbath, or expressed that our community is concerned that by the use of this QSIP, which we're still trying to verify whether it's actually transacted trades with, it may be happening in the dark pools or the ATSs. But our concern is, are they able to hide any sort of imbalance in formerly MMTLP, now at NextBridge? I will toss it to you. That's where we finished.
And now, before you get started, Drew, let me just answer that part of it, and then you can carry on from there. Most trading, and I'm not a trade specialist, I'm a back office post-trade specialist. Post-trade, yes, we use QSIPs. So everything at DTCC and all subsidiaries is QSIP driven, not symbol driven. Symbols are used for trading. So to the best of my knowledge, again, not a trade expert, but trading, you don't trade under a CUSIP, you trade under a ticker, right? So you have a 3-letter ticker for NYSE, 4-letter ticker for NASDAQ, and sometimes I think the OTCs go even longer than that. But so you don't really trade under a CUSIP. And a CUSIP, once it's assigned, to the best of my knowledge, is not reused. And and there might be some special rules under which a ticker can be reused, but you could check, say, NYSE or NASDAQ for that information about assigning tickers. Generally, that's done at the IPO, at the initial public offering, or when a company is spun off, they get a new ticker, right? So in that case, first of all, let me just say, as someone who's done a little bit of forensic accounting, mostly from the, looking at these issues from a post-trade perspective, this constant changing of names, changing of symbols, spinning off, merging, unmerging, et cetera, these are all red flags. They're all red flags about what's actually going on at the company before you even get to what the brokers and everybody else are doing. This is just companies themselves. It's like if you're an accountant, or if you're looking at financial statements, and you see that the company frequently changes their method of accounting from first in, first out to last in, first out, or how they recognize certain off-balance sheet liabilities, every time they change their method of accounting, and that's always in the footnotes of the financial statements, that's also a red flag. You have to ask yourself, why did they do that? So the questions you should be asking is, why is Torchlight, Metamaterials, MMTLP, why is that happening? And this might shed some light on like the kind of problems with the company themselves. One of the issues that we ended up with looking at CMKM Diamonds was that the company had internally were doing things that were nefarious, because I can't think of a better word. And certainly the brokers were doing a lot of bad stuff. But once the company begins engaging in these red flag actions, it's very, very hard to get media, journalists, investigators, even regulators to look seriously at the trading problems and the post-trading problems, because the first thing they're going to look at is the company itself. So that part of it, the SEC filing these investigations is not helping at all. Is it helping to get to have the lawsuits? My opinion, yes, if you can get discovery on the other side, if you can get discovery from the broker, like if you have that document right now from, it's not PlayStation, it's TradeStation that says, we lent out more shares than we had, and we just don't have the shares that we told you that were in your account. I mean, that's pretty plain, that's pretty plain evidence that they in fact have taken your money and given you nothing. At a minimum, in my view, this is just my view as an economist and a professional in post-trade, you are entitled at a minimum to the return of all the money that you paid in the first place, plus compensation for loss of use of funds because they kept your money, you weren't able to do anything else with it, plus compensation for the additional risk that you took while TradeStation had your money, and because they weren't actual shares in your account, you may or may not be protected under SIPC. So that's just, Drew, if you want to take it from that point where we've talked about these lawsuits and are they helpful and that sort of thing, go ahead.
Yes, so there's a tremendous deal to unpack in what you just said, and I appreciate all of it. So as it relates to the Torchlight metamaterials, the name changing, for us, from the retail investor's perspective, it was very seamless. Torchlight, metamaterials merged with Torchlight in an effort to get uplisted onto the NASDAQ. They were a Canadian company. They didn't want to be in the oil and gas business, so Torchlight spun out all of their assets to the Series A. Metamaterials essentially moved in and changed the did a QSIP change and a ticker symbol change and did all of the compliance, and they ended up with essentially Torchlight's place on the NASDAQ. What's interesting about what you just said to me is that this company that is now known as BitTech, thanks to Robin for bringing this to my attention anyway, this company known as BitTech started as a Canadian company as Delta Capital Technologies, then became Newmark Ventures, then became MagnaPets, then became Global Gaming Holdings, then became Intrepid Global Imaging 3D, then became VersaCard, then became Spine Pain Management, then became Spine Injury Solutions, and 7 years later, in 2022, notably right around the time this whole MMTLP halt debacle happened, they became BitTech Technologies, and now they have the same QSIP that Torchlight did. So all of those red flags that you mentioned having to do with name changes, right there. And similarly, you mentioned the TradeStation thing. The funny thing is that TradeStation is not so TradeStation isn't the first brokerage to TradeStation is only the first brokerage to raise their hand and acknowledge that they have a problem. But in terms of giving their clients the runaround for transferring to the transfer agent, we've literally encountered the community, different investors in the community have put forward evidence that virtually every single broker that is caught up in this mess was giving them a runaround about transferring, particularly those that are located overseas. Some of these overseas brokerages are absolutely denying anybody the right to transfer their shares to the transfer agent. So it certainly seems that TradeStation is the first one to admit that they have a problem, but the problem seems to be reflective throughout all the brokerages. And I don't know if you can see him, but there's a gentleman named Gandalf. He, I believe, is requesting a microphone. He's actually an actuary, and he's a real numbers whiz, and he would probably be in a better position to discuss some of the mathematical impossibilities of our situation that I'm sure you would also find interesting if you'd be so kind to bring Gandalf up.
Well, I'm actually not,
the time is 10:00 p.m.
The reason we opened this is because you said you had something that was mind-blowing. And the fact that there are more shares in customer accounts, household investor accounts, than have ever been issued by the company, more shares out on loan than have ever been issued by the company, more shares owned by institutional investors than have ever been issued by the company, does not surprise me. I've been watching this for 20 years. So to get another set of specific numbers on another ticker is not particularly helpful, right?
So yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to make a little confession here. I did not know, and I still don't know exactly, what your level of familiarity was. But from start to finish, I would say, looking at the timeline of all that the community has uncovered with respect not only to the imbalance that we believe exists, but also because of the admissions of the company and the admissions of TradeStation. I didn't know, I never knew how familiar you were with this situation. But and now that I have a better idea of it, I think that mathematically, I think that for the purposes of kind of giving you that information, I think the best people to explain it would either be one Gandalf or one Curtis. I did not expect this space to be happening so short notice. Otherwise, I would have been way better prepared. But if you see Gandalf in the mic requests, he might be able to shed some more light on that for you.
Well, part of the problem is, and the reason you didn't get, we couldn't do like an advanced planning thing is that you and Gandalf and many others are anonymous. And I don't personally, I'm not anonymous. And so I don't see any benefit for me in interacting with anonymous users on any platform when I myself am not anonymous.
I can absolutely respect that, but I think JunkSavvy would vouch for the fact that a lot of community members here have gone under some serious personal attacks and invasions of their privacy.
I'm sure, and listen, Drew, I got to step in here because I've heard that before too. I mean, for 20 years, I've been listening to this. There are guys who, I don't know how familiar, right now, I don't know how familiar you actually are with my work, but there was a guy named Dave Patch. He was an engineer with one of the big defense industry firms in the Midwest. And he sent letters to the SEC, and he would put himself out there, with his own name, and got hacked and got, attacked many times. It is an issue. I mean, it becomes a problem. But if you really want to get something done and you really want to affect change and you want to be part of lawsuits and things like that, it is virtually impossible to do that and remain anonymous. And so I would urge anyone who, really feels that, it's pitchfork time, you want to make changes, that you've got to come around. You've got to come around to the idea that the anonymity is only hurting you in attempting to be heard and to be someone that people will turn to for information on a particular issue.
I can respect and appreciate that. I can respect and appreciate that. And there's, usually I'm very good at coming back with something, but I got nothing. That was very well said, and I got nothing. All I can say is that these, like people like Costas, who is not anonymous, or people like Gandalf, these are people that for the last 2 years have demonstrated a real aptitude for market mechanics and have a plentiful abound of information as it relates to this situation. And the same thing goes as well for JunkSavvy, who I understand that you've been a bit familiar with. I get it, and I agree. And there are people that there have been multiple litigations centered around this issue. A major problem that we're having with getting to discovery, as you mentioned, is that every single one of these brokerages has those arbitration clauses, and those arbitration clauses are ironclad, and the Federal Arbitration Act, which makes any case that has an arbitration clause mandatory to go to arbitration, has also been very difficult for anyone to overcome.
Well, and even if you get past that, you're still going to be pushed to the Southern District of New York, because none of the other courts will. And there was a Supreme Court decision, I think it was Billings was the name of it. I've posted about it several times, that basically says that this has to go federal, and it all ends up in the Southern District of New York. And once you get there, even if you get to jury, you've got a jury that is probably 90% works on Wall Street, or is somehow associated with it. So I'm not saying that it's easy in any way. If it was easy, then I would talk to every person who was interested in every ticker about every problem they have with a broker. It's not easy, but you have to have people who are truly committed to pushing this thing through. Look at the example of Eagle Tech. And he was actually, there were actually criminal charges brought against the brokers and underwriters that damaged his company. And yet the SEC wouldn't listen to him. He got one hearing, and they let him speak for about 20 minutes, and that was it. And they would not entertain anything else he had to say. And if you go to YouTube and you look for Rod Young's presentation to the Securities and Exchange Commission, I think it's in 4 parts, because of the length or the size of the files. I'm not sure which. But if you look at that, you'll see exactly pretty much the same thing that's happening here. And that was a company that was solid. They had a solid product that had revenues. There were no shenanigans going on. That was all broker shenanigans. But like I said, if you've got a company where they're changing names, they're merging, unmerging, they're changing their tickers and CUSIPs, those are all red flag issues. And that makes it doubly hard to get at the brokers. I really think that the states, under some state laws associated with fair practices or something like that, that those might be a better bet than trying to go through, through federal courts. But I'm not a lawyer. I just have been around a lot of lawyers, and
Uh-oh.
Did they get her?
Uh-oh.
Dr. Trimbath, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry. I was just saying that I was even married to a lawyer at one point, but I'm not a lawyer myself, and so the legal process that to take place here I think is problematic. But when the real systemic issues go back to this idea that the broker is allowed to take your money and give you nothing, and that everybody in Washington and Wall Street thinks that's okay, that's how the system works. I happen to think it's not okay. I happen to think it's a very serious problem, and one that if we don't deal with, and soon, and with some finality, will simply continue to be an issue. So I'm talking to you. I talked 20 years ago, I talked to people who are old enough probably to be your parents. And 20 years from now, I may not be around to talk to your kids about the same problems. But unless we address the systemic problems, the regulatory crisis, number one, that was Peruvian Bull. I did a whole thing with him on the regulatory crisis. And then I have been looking for someone, and I've already got someone picked out that I'll do probably a video chat with on the how to end self-regulation in financial services, because that's at the heart of it. That's really, I mean, it's so close to the problem, the real source of the problem.
Actually, Dr. Trimbath, can I, if you'll indulge me for a minute, I have a couple of questions in regards to that issue. We have been talking about it. One of the other community members, Busy Brands, and I were fortunate enough to speak with RFK's market reform team, and as well as others. And so regulatory capture is such a huge issue, as well as what you said, the self-regulatory issues. So my question to you is, how do we extract the rot out of this system? You've got these regulators who are, they're controlled by their member firms whose interests are in exact opposite of retail investors. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. And so whose side are they going to pick? Who are they going to protect? In an MMTLP, it's obvious who they're protecting.
So yes, so I think I reposted something today about this guy from the DOJ who said in March that in the next few months you're going to hear big news about actions we're taking from the SEC and the Department of Justice against short sellers. And in October he went through the revolving door out into private practice and is now in charge of that company's practice for defending the Wall Street firms against SEC enforcement. So the regulatory capture revolving door, kind of the same thing. It's the question of getting Congress to be serious about passing these bills that they've toyed with over the last several years that would prohibit members of Congress, members of people who work from the SEC, for example, from going to work for firms that lobby the SEC, or law firms that defend against SEC enforcement for a period of 5 to 10 years. I mean, there's got to be some period of time. You can't be there in May saying we're going after the short sellers, and then in October move to a firm that defends short sellers. that has to stop, and the only way that can change, I believe, is through an act of Congress.
And just to build on that, I think you might find it interesting to know that we have learned that the Uniform Practices Code Committee was responsible for placing the U3 halt, and very shortly after the halt, appointed to the Uniform Practices Committee was none other than Nikki Brinkerhoff, Chief Compliance Officer of TradeStation.
So it's not surprising to me that that happened. It's also a trade side issue, and I'm not really, I mean, it's happening on the trade side. I'm not really a trade side person. I don't, it's not my specialty. That's why I look at SEC enforcement and, DOJ enforcement, those sort of things. That's where my expertise is. I try to stay in my lane there, but doesn't surprise me in the least. And Junk, I just wanted to get to that one piece first. You said there was something else you wanted to ask about?
No, I had several questions, but to bounce off of what Drew just said. So are you aware of the UPC committee and what their duties and responsibilities are?
No, that's on the trade side. I don't really
Oh,
monitor
okay. I was going to say they have direct responsibility over processing of corporate actions as well as halts, all the different halts that they do, especially on the OTC market. But every member of that committee, every member firm, there are 8 of them. There's 2 FINRA advisors, and every member firm has significant liabilities in MMTLP. And so it is no... Yeah, I mean,
So
there's a lot that
the only
can
thing
be gleaned from that.
only thing I can say to you on that is that the SEC did, like I think they were forced under Dodd-Frank, the SEC was required to look at the corporate governance of some of these organizations. In other words, who is getting on committees, who is sitting on the board of directors, and do they have representatives from household investors and, non-industry insiders? And that was, Dodd-Frank came out in 2010, and in 2024, they're still just sort of piddling around with writing rules about it. But that's certainly across the board, trading, post-trading, wherever. And honestly, I mean, just keep in mind, this is not just in the financial industry. This happens in medicine, this happens in food, this happens in airlines, this happens in cars. And then these problems exist across the board. Our particular concern, of mine especially, is in finance. But that's an issue of governance that is possible. And again, I didn't really trace through all of the trade side stuff, but on the post-trade side, the SEC was definitely tasked with looking at corporate governance issues and who's allowed to sit on the boards, and are these boards, or is it all foxes in charge of the hen house,
Sure.
or have they got a few hens in there?
Yeah. Dr. Trimbath, Curtis, whose handle is Bleed Blue 18. He is in the house. He is one of our incredible community members, and he's an amazing resource for information and can give perspective and
if he can't blow your mind, I'll say I'm a little teapot.
So if you can bring, it's Bleed Blue 18. He has a blue avatar. And he's handsome to boot. So there you go. But I also wanted to ask you while you're looking for him. So you talked about, the regulatory failures, and the regulatory capture. I have documented just on information that we have, including FOIA disclosures and recently a declaration in the Intercoastal Waterways case, the TradeStation case that I mentioned earlier, from a former CEO. There were 16 points of failure by 5 different regulators, whether officially SROs or who have regulation capacity, i.e. OTC market, NASDAQ, DTC, OCC, NSCC, as well as the FEC, where had they chosen differently, Dr. Trimbath, had just one, they chosen differently, we would not be in this situation. How are retail investors ever going to be able to get a fair shake in this system? Would you be in favor of, you mentioned Congress and passing regulation and laws, actually. Would you be in favor of something like a retail, or I believe you called it household investor, Bill of Rights? What do you think is the solution for this?
So here's the thing. when you say, as I call them, household investors, Junk, I would hope that you and others on this space would be paying a little more attention than just to say that so lightly. I think it is a critical difference between a retail investor and a household investor. So retail customers buy toasters. Household investors is actually the name that the government puts on the data when they try to figure out how many equities, how many bonds, et cetera, people are holding, people outside of the industry, institutional investors, et cetera. So I would hope that you would put a little more weight on that. I think it's important as long as you let them call you retail, then they have 1,001 ways to dismiss everything that you talk about, every complaint that you send in. Am I in favor of a household investor bill of rights? Of course. I mean, I'm working with Exchange Now on something very similar to that. We're making great progress with the European Parliament. We've got direct contact with the committee members who are, in fact, developing they're still using retail, what they call a retail investor initiative. Because I don't know if you're old enough to remember the Stop Apartheid Now movement. But
absolutely. I'm older than you think I am. I'm in my fifth decade, so yes.
Okay, well, you sound quite young still.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. So in the Stop Apartheid Now movement, there were demonstrations on college campuses to stop the universities from investing their endowments in companies that did business in apartheid South Africa. There were boycotts of consumer products that are associated with companies who did business that promoted and went along with apartheid in South Africa. So the power that household investors hold in their hands is enormous. And it's not just that you're holding shares directly on your own or you have them with your broker or whatever, but that you've invested your money directly. But pension money is invested there through your employers. Pension money is invested there through, whatever, if you're in an investment fund instead of directly in stocks, that's all handled by a money manager. Though if you threaten to remove your investments, right, if you begin to demand that your employer pension fund, for example, no longer invest with or in Goldman Sachs. Let's just pick on Goldman because they're the biggest bad guy. If we begin to boycott them and try to get pension funds and businesses to divest from them and their funds, this would put enormous pressure on them to fall in line and begin to behave in a way that benefits the household investor and not just themselves.
Circling back to Junk's original question, are you able to see Curtis here, Dr. Trimbath?
No, Curtis told me he actually had to leave. So
yeah, well, we've actually already been on here longer than an hour, and we waited. I was going to wait about 15 minutes. It took a while for you to get in, Drew, and we had those problems coming back and forth. But like an hour is really the limit for me. So
Curtis,
I'm about finished to wrap up here, unless you have one more question. Or again, I have yet to hear anything that would totally blow my mind. It's something I've never imagined could be true. I've heard a lot of things that are the same stories I've been hearing for the last 20 years. I'm only just now heard from Junk that, let's put together a Bill of Rights for what we as household investors are entitled to. For example, you don't take money out of my cash out of my account until you have the shares, period, end of story. You don't lend shares from my account, margin or otherwise, without compensating me. If I have a margin account and I agree to let you lend shares from my account for the privilege of having a margin account, then I deserve I deserve to be compensated for that period of time within which the shares are not in my account because they're out on loan. Because the broker's earning fees on those loans, why are they not sharing it with the individual investor who, as you see from the long post document that DrewDiligence put up about what the trade station said. There's a risk. You are now at risk that they have loaned out your shares. And guess what? They don't have enough, the music has stopped and there aren't enough shares to go around. And someone's going to get stuck holding the bag. And guess who? It's not going to be the institutional investor who, by the way, always shares in the fees earned on stock lending. That's the only reason they even participate in it, is to get some of that money. Yeah, Junk?
So I have one question. Maybe if you like it, you'll afford me to. But Dr. Trimbath, after the stock was halted, MMTLP was halted and eventually canceled. Nexbridge Hydrocarbon does not have a QSIP, but they do have an identifier that they use, similar to a QSIP, 9 digits. Several of the brokers use that number, but we collected 27 different identifiers that were used in the brokers to represent our Nexbridge Hydrocarbon shares. Do you have an explanation or understanding about why they would do that method? Is there something behind it, or is it just internal bookkeeping?
It's not an international, an ISID, International Securities Identifier, right? I think they're 12 digits.
No,
They're all not, they're 9 digits.
They're random contra QSIPs that correlate to nothing.
I mean, you could look at the number if you wanted to do, sort of dig into it a bit, figure out how to test the check digit on a QSIP. If they're all different and all representing the same ticker, I doubt very much it's an assigned QSIP. And the way to identify that, so like at a system at DTC, every time I put a QSIP into the system, it would run that mathematical check. And if there was any typo error in the QSIP, it would recognize it because the check digit wouldn't match.
The problem is that some of these brokerages have the same identifier number. They seem to be grouped. Like 5 brokerages will have the same identifier number, but a separate set of brokerages will share a different identifier number. TD Ameritrade had their own identifier number, and
we're guessing, Dr. Trimbath, it correlates to maybe their counterbroker agreements. I know exactly what you were saying, digging into Gandalf, the guy that we've been trying to get you up. He's actually done that. So if you want to get him up, he can explain to you what he did, and maybe you guys can riff on that. But yeah,
no, I can't really, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I can't really do that because that's all about the trade side and and the broker records, and that I don't have expertise in that. And I wouldn't want to put it out there to say something and have people put it out there as if it was, was said by an expert, because that's not my expertise. And what you're talking about are the broker records. And I've never actually looked at broker records. Rare cases where I've been on lawsuits, an expert witness on lawsuits, and they'll show me some broker records, but I've very rarely seen them.
Have you ever seen a situation where a corporate action is actually modified or rewritten by the regulator and they have told the issuer, do not opine? Do not opine.
You mean do not opine?
So,
do not offer an opinion?
FINRA changed the verbiage in the corporate action notice, and they instructed Nexbridge, don't make a big deal out of it. Don't opine. This is the verbiage that you have to go with. And
they told them not to try to say things outside of that. I'm sure it's come up before. That's why they always have this little disclaimer at the bottom of every press release. It says, this press release contains forward-looking statements that are not meant to be financial advice, blah, blah, blah. I mean, there are restrictions on what they're allowed to say, most of which sort of take us back to the crash of 29, when you had what they call blue sky companies. So companies that had just all they had was a name and a QSIP and a ticker, and they traded, and there was no company underneath it. So nothing but the clear blue sky. So a lot of states put in blue sky laws saying that you can't trade stocks that don't have companies, right? So that's so there are restrictions on what companies are allowed to say. That doesn't seem to me to be that unusual.
But you mentioned that the trades, they happen based on symbols. The problem that we ran into is that FINRA seemingly prioritized deleting the symbol before the one-for-one exchange took place. they deleted the symbol before the cancellation.
Yeah, I saw that posted in several places, and that's the difference between trade and trade settlement. Like you can't, they don't want to be, so if they wait until the actual date and then they let you trade, let's say they let you trade on the last day, then there's no time to settle. So you have to back it up so that the trades that trade can be settled by the closeout date. Am I making that clear? I don't know if I said that clearly.
Yes, but
yeah.
So the question with respect to, like, you know, if indeed naked shorting took place here, the question that I like to ask people that say to me, yeah, they had to halt trading because the trades never would have settled. The question that I like to ask people is, how long does it take to settle a trade for a share that never existed? Because as far as I'm concerned, that position exists solely as a liability on the broker's books because it's not backed by a physical share of stock. So theoretically, on those last 2 days, had there been purchasing of the MMTLP security, would that have served? Could that have served to simply scratch the liability off of the broker's books to no longer have to deliver the share?
No, because there wouldn't be time for the trade. The trading was stopped because there wouldn't be time to settle before it was scratched.
If I can actually,
and also you just keep, like, this is really irritating me.
Oh,
you just keep using words like Drew does. Keep not junk, but Drew, you keep using words like, you keep bringing up naked short selling. And if you know anything about the work that I've done, that's not really the problem. Okay, so if you keep asking me about that, what do you want me to say? I don't, as a trading problem, I'm not dealing with trading problems. Naked short selling is, regulatory crisis level 1, we have a rule against it. So, we enforce the rule and it can never, that's why it doesn't happen. And when it happens, we go after the bad guys. It's not yes, every naked short sell results in a failure to deliver, but failures to deliver happen without naked short selling. So every time you say naked short selling, you're cutting off your own access to regulators, to informed experts in the field who are just going to dismiss you out of hand. And this is what they've been doing for 20 years, dismiss you out of hand because, oh, naked short selling, yeah, that's already illegal. So
does the phrase phantom shares work better?
They're creating phantom shares,
yes,
but the phantom shares created from in the broker's books after the fail to deliver at the depository.
So I apologize for that. For us, it's been used interchangeably for the last 24 months. So please.
I know, but I'm talking about 24 years that I've been trying to get people to stop saying that the problem is naked short selling. So
yeah,
I don't.
On your space with Peruvian Bull, I heard you say, I was listening to that space, and you did clarify that we have a failure to deliver problem. So
right.
Do you want to expand on that just a little?
Exactly, and settlement efficiency is the way they refer to it in Europe. They call it settlement efficiency. So if settlement efficiency is 96%, that means that 4% of the trades failed to settle, right? So if a level 1 regulatory crisis is where Wall Street and Washington cling to the rules and say these are the rules and nothing can happen that isn't in the rules. Be damned the fact that you, the investor, are out your money and have no shares to show for it. So that's what naked short selling brings up. It brings up the opportunity for someone to say, we have rules against it, they're being enforced, nothing else we can do about it, go away, leave us alone, sort of thing. It's the more you just keep using that phrase over and over. I have used it myself in the past because for a couple of reasons. Number one, if I say naked short selling, you all know what I mean, right? Everybody understands that now. 20 years ago, nobody knew what the hell that was. Like there were experts working for lawyers who admitted to me they had no idea what it meant. They were just passing themselves off as experts. But if I say it, it's a sort of a shorthand for this great big problem that we're talking about now, right? Where the broker says, I'm sorry, I can't send your shares to AST because we loaned out more than we had, and there's just aren't any, we didn't get a certificate, and there's nothing here, there's nothing left for you, the music has stopped, right? There are no more shares left. So if I use naked short selling, it's only as a shorthand for this broader issue. But I don't want you to focus on just that piece, because then you look at the short positions, you look at the short trades and the short percentage. Okay, interesting, but it doesn't tell you what did or didn't result in a fail to deliver.
That's actually a very, very helpful piece of constructive criticism, and I take it as such. So thank you.
Thank you.
Before you go, I do wonder. So, have you ever seen a situation where short shares have been allowed to go into a private company?
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sorry. I just don't even know what that means. Short shares are allowed to go into a private company. What does that even mean?
So when MMTLP was exchanged for NextBridge Hydrocarbons, the NextBridge Hydrocarbons is a non-tradable SEC filer. So they do SEC filings, but they're not tradable. My question is, I have not been able to find examples of a situation where short shares were, like when Twitter, for example, was purchased by Elon Musk, all of the shorts had to close before Twitter went private. I'm curious, and I ask this question because, as I stated before, FINRA allowed 2.65 million shares that were 2.65 million short positions to essentially be exchanged into this private non-tradable company. My question is, do you believe that the regulatory establishment would do something like that to create a buffer for what could be a larger amount of fails to deliver?
I'm not sure that question really makes sense. I'm sorry. It's just not, I'm just, you're calling short positions. So you're saying that there were open short positions that were covered by borrowed shares. So if they were covered by borrowed shares, then there were actually shares there.
Well, they're claiming that they were covered, but as we saw with TradeStation, they weren't. They left their shareholders.
But you don't know one way or the other if they were covered.
No, we haven't been able to get a share audit done.
No.
No. Do you believe
I think it's.
Do you believe that?
I mean, I think it's. I just again, it's a sort of a trade side, a corporate issuance side. You know, a reorganization, corporate reorganization question. And that's not, I'm really not up to date on corporate reorgs. I was some years ago when I worked, around that area. But in a corporate reorg, again, I can only talk to you from the post-trade side, from the depository side. And they would, if there were, let's say, if the going away company, the company was going away, if a broker had a short position, they would have to cover that before they could actually get the new, whatever it's moving into, right? So if you're exchanging company A for company B, and a broker had a short position in company A, they would not get company B shares until they covered their company A's shorts, right? So, and maybe that's what happened in that case, that there were these short positions that were going into the Torchlight, I think you said. So
into NextBridge, yes.
From Torchlight to NextBridge, and NextBridge is not tradable, and Torchlight was. So if there were short positions in Torchlight, and let's assume, because I don't know, that this was processed through the depository.
Well, that's actually.
Then any broker who had a short position in that, I'm going to have to use A and B again. So if anyone who had a short position in company A would not get company B shares unless and until they covered their short positions. Because when a broker fails to deliver, right, then they owe shares to the depository. And if you owe shares of company A to the depository, They're not going to give you Company B shares in a reorg unless you've covered your Company A shorts.
Yeah. Well, so, okay. So because you're more familiar with the depository side, we uncovered some memos at the OCC that on October 6th, it was stated.
So Drew, that's options. That's not, I just do stocks and bonds.
Right, but but they were dictating the method in which the MMTLP shares were going to be settled. And the latest memo said that they would be settled via the NSCC. I actually spoke to somebody on.
I saw your post on that.
Yes, ma'am. And the NSCC stated, well, the DTCC stated that they didn't handle settlement and clearing of the MMTLP security. Does that what
I don't
kind
know
of
what someone told you on the phone. I can't speak to that.
What if I got it in writing and showed it to you? Would you then be able to speak to it?
Well, you're going to get in writing. You're going to get someone to write down a piece of paper that it wasn't processed there and send that to me. Did you look through important notices? Did you ever find anything on that in the, because every time there's a reorg, DTC and NSCC put out an important notice that says, here's how it's going to be processed. Here's your cutoff date. Here's your record date. Here's your distribution date. Here's your, 5 days or whatever it is, you have to correct things. And then the brokers among themselves have to figure out who owes me those shares or whatever it is, and get that all straightened out by a certain period of time. And then it's shut off.
Well, Dr.
Did you find those?
Let me ask it this way. Is there another mechanism via perhaps some sort of broker-to-broker settlement that could be used outside of the NSCC to settle trades in what was the preferred share dividend that was trading on the OTC?
Yes.
Can you describe what that would be?
So they can actually do deliver orders through DTC if they want. They can put in a deliver order, delivery versus payment, or a cash. I forget what it's called, but it's like a cash delivery. So they can send money back and forth between brokers. They can send stock back and forth between brokers, or they can send stocks versus cash back and forth between brokers, all through DTCC. It does get lumped into the continuous net settlement. Broker to broker outside of the clearing, since it's X clearing, it's outside, it's not reported. So they could, in fact, wire transfer money, exchange certificates, or, go to their AST account and say, give 100 shares of MMTLP from Goldman to Merrill and just move it to their account. They could, yes, that can all happen.
Have you seen a circumstance where a stock that's trading several million shares a day or a week would be traded in such manner outside of the NSCC? I mean, not on a one-to-one or even, a partial basis, but completely for a year and a half.
I mean, I haven't looked at one that's done that. It's usually done, they're mostly done as one-offs. You don't do it on and on for a year. But again, if it's broker to broker, then only those two brokers know what happened. And no one would see it except those two brokers. And if you can get someone inside those two brokers to come forward as a whistleblower and, they figure out something that was done that was wrong. But otherwise, there's no way you would know that.
Do you have any connection? No, I've seen you call for whistleblowers before, actually on an MMTLP post. So, but personally, if you know someone at Fidelity, let me know.
None that would come forward. None that would come forward. Yeah. I know people who still work on the street. The ones that I've been able to name have already left the industry. They've either retired or moved into something else. Like Carl Hagberg, like Ray Riley, like Tom Montrone, people like that. And there's others that I can't name because they still work in the industry. And so I wouldn't want to jeopardize their position. They would certainly offer any help that they could. And I've gone to them for help, not I'm not saying specifically at Fidelity, but they still work with brokerage firms, and I can go to them for help on specific cases, for example, if I need. So I can compensate them as research assistants. But I can't use their names because, of course, they work there. So it just have to be background information for me.
Well, Dr. Trimbath, I want to respect your time. So I really appreciate you indulging my questions and giving me a mic. And I'm going to go ahead and drop down, but I'm going to toss it to Drew to see if he has any last questions. But thank you so much. I know we've been trying to, ask you questions before, so it really was a privilege. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I echo that sentiment. And I just want to say thank you to JunkSavvy for kind of jumping up when I was having connection problems and contributing to what I feel has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you, Junk. Dr. Trimbath, I am going to, I do believe that I am going to be able to get in some form of writing from the DTCC exactly what the method of settlement was. And I'd be more than happy to send that your way. I could DM it to you if you send me a.
No, because as long as you're anonymous, then I'm not opening my DMs. I'm not, giving you emails and things like that.
I'd be more than happy to reveal myself to you. No problem.
There are ways for you. Well, then go on to Coffee.
Yes, ma'am.
ko-fi.com.
Yes, ma'am.
And you can private message me there. We can engage in, conversations.
Yes, ma'am. I absolutely will do that.
But honestly, Drew, I haven't heard anything from you that is mind-blowing. I don't think that, because I think that's probably because you're not really that familiar with the work that I've done. Maybe that's why there are things that you're finding out now that are surprising and shocking to you. I understand that, but you've been at this 2 years. I've been at this 24 years. Doesn't surprise or shock me. So,
I am dwarfed by your level of experience 100%, and I own
but
that.
I'm sure there's things that you're going to send to me and ask me to look at, much of which, as I've said, all the trade side stuff, all the brokered record stuff, not much I can do for you.
Well, I'm humbled by your willingness to have this impromptu space with us. And I very much appreciate and respect your expertise here. I guess my last question would be, if you were, so we've tried the route with, we've tried going through Congress. Congress has requested a share audit. The regulatory establishment has refused to provide it. We have gone, I've done media appearances. We've been on, we've had appearances on Fox Business discussing this issue at length. There have been lawsuits. What else do you believe that there is that the retail, that members of the investing public can do to force some kind of a share audit or put pressure on the regulatory establishment to provide the same?
I think you have to put aside your personal gain here and start to look at the broader systemic problems and the actions that you can take to make those corrections, so this doesn't happen to someone else, so this doesn't happen to your kids or your grandkids.
Yeah, and would I be wrong in saying, so since the security is no longer tradable, the consensus is that exposing what the share audit is would then lead to those reforms, would then demonstrate the need for those reforms to take place on the broader scale.
Man, I get it. I understand what you're saying, and then it has been tried before, but now that MMTLP has come under SEC investigation, it's going to be increasingly difficult to use them as an example to make this work. That was a problem that CMKM had. They, once, because the company itself had a lot of red flags, no one took seriously the fact that there were thousands of household investors who were told by their brokers, my dog ate your certificate, on the same day that they were getting certificates for themselves and their institutional investor clients on the same day that they were getting shares issued for themselves. They were telling household investors, I'm sorry, but the transfer agent isn't issuing certificates anymore. So that to me is a flagrant abuse that the CMKM field was unable to get addressed because there were red flags in the company. There's one question from Jade, and then I've really got to go. Go ahead, Jade. Why don't you ask a question?
Yeah, thank you so much, Doc. And it's really not really a question as much as it's an opportunity, because for years, I've been reading and following you and of respecting you. And I just really wanted to take the opportunity, and it's incredibly selfish, yet I wanted to thank you for your patience over the years, not just for me, but for so many others that I, interact with. Um, I really appreciate the tight wire you walk. And, I'm not asking for any favor. I'm not going to come at you for questions. Like, I want you to know I respect you. And I just really appreciate that you've probably taught this like 4 generations, every year there's like, another generation of us coming that you have to like school. And I just want you to know I see that, and I thank you, and I just want to give you that. So thank you for being in our world and being a resource, and really, and for me, a role model. And I want to just let you know I really appreciate you, and I see you, and I thank you, and that's it. So thank you, my dear.
Thank you very much, Jade. And I have seen you on LinkedIn, so I know that I know you're a real person. So I appreciate that. And okay, so that's it for today. And Drew,
Thank you.
I know that feel that your constant asking has led to this, but it wasn't. What led to this was you saying that you thought you had something sort of earth-shattering for me that was going to really surprise you. And I don't think you did. I don't think you did.
There are some things. There are things that I will be sending to you via Kofi, and I'm perfectly fine taking that. I'll wear that black eye, no problem.
Okay.
But there are things that I will be signing up and sending to you via Kofi, and I'm also on LinkedIn, and we'll see if I can't cash that check that my mouth wrote.
Okay, we'll see.
Thank you so very much for your time tonight. Thank you.
Everybody rest well.
Thank you.
I'll see you.